The vultures circled overhead as Cordelia's cracked lips whispered a prayer into the merciless Arizona sun. Her husband's men had stripped her of everything water, horse, dignity before riding away with cruel laughter echoing across the vast emptiness. The ropes around her wrists had long since cut through skin, and the wooden stake they'd bound her to seemed to mock her with its stubborn permanence. "Should have kept your mouth shut about the missing cattle money," she wheezed to herself, remembering how Jeremir's face had twisted with rage when she'd confronted him about his gambling debts. 3 days of marriage, and she'd already sealed her fate by threatening to write to her father back in Tennessee. The sound of hoofbeats made her heart leap until she realized they were coming from the wrong direction. Not the thunder of cavalry, horses she'd prayed for, but the careful, measured approach of someone who moved like shadow and wind. Her vision blurred as a figure materialized through the heat shimmer, dismounting with fluid grace. Even through her delirium, she recognized the strong jaw, the obsidian eyes that had haunted her dreams for 5 years. Dakota stood before her like a ghost from another life, his long black hair catching the desert wind. The Apache warrior she'd loved in secret, the man whose people her own kind had driven from their ancestral lands. "Nijoni," he whispered, using the Navajo word for beautiful that he taught her so long ago. His knife glinted as he cut her bonds, and she collapsed into arms that felt like coming home. "You single quotes real?" She gasped, her voice barely audible. His weathered hands cupped her face with infinite tenderness. "I have been watching the settlement. I saw what they did." His English carried the same careful cadence she remembered, each word chosen with precision. "I will not let you die in this place of bones and sorrow." As he lifted her onto his paint horse, memories flooded back stolen moments by the river when she was 17, the way he'd taught her to read the stars, how her father had sent her away to marry a suitable man when their secret meetings were discovered. She'd thought that chapter of her life was closed forever. The horse moved with surprising gentleness as Dakota guided them toward distant mesas. Cordelia drifted in and out of consciousness, but she felt safe for the first time in years. This was the man who'd carved her wooden combs, who'd shown her how to find water in the desert, who'd promised they would find a way to be together despite the hatred between their peoples. "The others," she managed to whisper. "Your tribe, they'll remember what my people did to yours." Dakota's jaw tightened. "Some wounds run deeper than the canyon. But you were never part of their war." His voice carried old pain. "You tried to warn us about the soldiers. You chose love over fear." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Cordelia realized that perhaps this wasn't the end of her story after all. The Apache camp materialized from the landscape like a mirage becoming reality. Hidden in a canyon where red rock walls provided natural fortification, it was nothing like the savage encampments described in the settlement's fearful whispers. Children played near carefully tended fires while women worked with animal hides, their movements efficient and purposeful. But Cordelia felt the weight of suspicious stares as Dakota carried her past the Wickiups. These people had every reason to hate her kind. Their ancestral hunting grounds were now cattle ranches, their water sources claimed by homesteaders, their children forbidden to speak their own language in government schools. An elderly woman with silver-streaked braids stepped forward, her dark eyes measuring. "Nalnish," she said sharply, addressing Dakota with obvious authority. Dakota replied in rapid Apache, his tone respectful but firm. The conversation continued in their native tongue while Cordelia fought to stay conscious, understanding only fragments from her long-ago lessons. She caught the words for white woman and dying and sacred obligation. Finally, the matriarch who Dakota later introduced as his grandmother, Ayana, gestured toward a particular dwelling. "She says you may stay until you are strong enough to choose your path." Dakota translated. But some will not welcome this kindness. Inside the wickiup, as Ayanna tended her wounds with practiced hands, Cordelia marveled at the intricate basket work and beautifully carved items that spoke of a rich culture. This wasn't the primitive existence white settlers imagined. It was a sophisticated society adapted perfectly to the harsh desert environment. You remember any of our ways? Dakota asked, settling beside her with a bowl of unfamiliar but nourishing stew. In the firelight, his face was both the young man she'd loved and someone new harder, shaped by years of conflict and loss. Some, she admitted, struggling to sit upright. You taught me well, she paused, studying his weathered features. What happened to you after I was sent away? His expression darkened. The cavalry came that winter. My younger brother, Nate, tried to protect the children during the raid. He stared into the flames. They shot him while he carried a 4-year-old girl to safety. Cordelia's heart clenched. She remembered Nate's laugh, the way he'd tease them about their secret romance. I'm so sorry. The army said we were harboring hostiles. Your father, he was with them. Dakota's voice carried no accusation, only weary statement of fact. He believed he was protecting you from a dangerous savage. The weight of that revelation settled between them. Her own father had participated in the violence that had driven Dakota's people deeper into the wilderness, had helped create the very hatred that now surrounded her. And yet you saved me, she whispered. Love does not die. Because others choose war, he said simply. But it changes. Becomes something scarred, but perhaps stronger. He met her eyes directly. I am not the same man who carved you wooden flowers, Cordelia. The desert has made me hard in places I once was soft. Outside, she could hear voices, rising in heated discussion. Not everyone agreed with Ayanna's decision to shelter her, that much was clear. Tomorrow would bring difficult choices, and she was no longer the sheltered minister's daughter who had once believed love could conquer all divisions. But tonight, for the first time since her disastrous marriage, she felt hope flickering like the sacred fire at the center of the camp. Dawn brought tensions that crackled through the camp like dry lightning. Cordelia woke to find Dakota gone and voices raised in heated counsel outside. Through the wickiup's entrance, she glimpsed men gesturing angrily, their words too rapid for her limited understanding, but their meaning clear enough. Ayanna entered, carrying herbal tea and wearing an expression of grim determination. Some of the young warriors want you gone, she said in careful English. They say harboring a white woman will bring soldiers to our hidden place. They're right, Cordelia replied, struggling to her feet despite her weakness. I should leave before, sit. The command carried absolute authority. Ayanna had clearly been a force to be reckoned with long before age had silvered her hair. Dakota is fighting for you in council. Do not make his words meaningless by giving up. Through the opening, Cordelia could see her former lover standing before a semicircle of tribal leaders. Even from this distance, his presence commanded respect, shoulders straight, gestures controlled but passionate. He was defending her, she realized, potentially risking his own standing within the tribe. A young warrior with war paint on his cheeks suddenly pointed toward her hiding place and spoke words that needed no translation. The accusation in his tone made several men nod in agreement. That is Bidzil, Ayanna explained grimly. He lost his wife to cavalry bullets last spring. His hatred runs deep as canyon water. What is he saying? That you are a trap. That your husband's men will come looking, bringing soldiers. That we have suffered enough for one white woman's troubles. Ayanna's weathered hands worked steadily at grinding corn despite the drama unfolding. He is not wrong to be afraid. Dakota responded with equally intense passion, his voice carrying across the camp. Several older men leaned forward, listening intently. He tells them you once saved Apache children, Ayanna translated with something approaching approval, that you warned our scouts about the planned attack on the winter camp 5 seasons ago, that you chose exile over betraying our location. Cordelia remembered that terrible day overhearing her father and the cavalry captain planning their dawn raid, then slipping away to find Dakota by their secret meeting place. The warning had saved many lives, but it had also sealed her fate. Within days, she'd been bundled onto a stagecoach bound for an arranged marriage with a stranger. Bidziel's response came sharp and bitter. He says that was long ago. Ayanna continued, that white women cannot be trusted, that she will bring death to our children as surely as winter brings snow. The debate continued for what felt like hours, with support shifting back and forth like desert wind. Some spoke in Dakota's defense, others voiced suspicions and fears. Finally, an ancient man with deeply lined face raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, every person in the circle listened with profound respect. His words came slowly, weighted with authority earned through decades of wisdom. Grandfather Ashke says there will be a test, Ayanna translated, her voice suddenly tense. If you would stay among us, you must prove your heart belongs to our people, not to the white world that cast you out. She paused, studying Cordelia's face intently. Are you prepared for such a trial? Before Cordelia could answer, Dakota appeared in the entrance, his expression unreadable. The council has decided, he said quietly. 3 days from now, when the moon is full, you will undergo the ritual of choosing. If you succeed, you will be welcomed as one of us. If you fail... He didn't need to finish. In the desert, failure often meant death. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and growing dread. Dakota could tell her nothing about the nature of the trial. Tradition forbade it, but Ayanna proved more forthcoming in her own cryptic way. The test will ask who you truly are beneath the skin, the elder woman explained while teaching Cordelia to weave grass into tight coils. Not what you were born, but what you choose to become. And if I choose wrongly, then you were never meant to walk among us. Ayanna's weathered hands never paused in their work. But I have watched your eyes these past days. You look at our children with tenderness, not fear. You listen to our stories with hunger to understand, not judgment to condemn. These things matter. Cordelia had indeed been watching, learning, remembering. The way mothers sang ancient lullabies to quiet crying babies. How the men returned from hunting with jokes and laughter despite the hardships they faced. The reverent attention given to elders when they shared the old stories around the fire. This was the world Dakota had tried to describe to her years ago, a culture built on respect for the land, honor for ancestors, and fierce loyalty to the group's survival. So different from the rigid rules and social climbing that had defined her own upbringing. On the second day, Bidziel approached her while she helped prepare hides. His English was limited, but his message clear enough. You bring death, he said, bluntly, his scarred hands clenching into fists. Soldiers follow white women, always. Not if they believe I'm dead, Cordelia replied quietly, continuing her work. My husband wanted me gone. He won't search for a corpse. Bidziel studied her with calculating eyes. You think like Apache now. Good. Maybe you lived through trial. That evening, Dakota found her sitting alone outside the camp, staring at the vast expanse of stars. The night air carried the scent of sage and distant rain, and for a moment she could almost imagine they were 18 again, stealing moments by the river. Regrets? He asked, settling beside her on the sun-warmed rock. About the trial? No. She turned to study his profile in the starlight. About the years lost? Every day. She paused, gathering courage for what she needed to say. I never stopped loving you, Dakota, even when they forced me to speak wedding vows to another man. His hand found hers, calloused fingers intertwining with surprising gentleness. Love is not always enough. You taught me that when you chose duty over desire. I was 17 and terrified. My father threatened to have you killed if I refused the marriage. The old pain echoed in her voice. But your right love isn't. Enough. We need trust, understanding, shared purpose. Things that take time to rebuild. If you survive the trial, we will have time, he said softly. But you must know choosing our life means leaving your old world forever. No turning back, no longing for what was. The desert demands complete commitment. She squeezed his hand. Tighter. The white world already cast me out. I have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Thunder rumbled in the distance, promising the rare gift of desert rain. Tomorrow would bring the final day of preparation, and then the trial that would determine whether she lived as Apache or died as an outsider. But tonight, under the endless star-scattered sky, she felt more alive than she had in years. The morning of the trial dawned clear and still, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Cordelia had barely slept, but her mind felt sharp with anticipation rather than dulled by exhaustion. Whatever test awaited, she would meet it with the same fierce determination that had kept her alive in the wilderness. Ayanna woke her before sunrise with ceremonial clothing, a simple but beautifully crafted buckskin dress decorated with intricate beadwork and symbols she didn't recognize. These belong to my daughter, the elder woman explained. She would have been your age had the soldiers not taken her during the winter raids. The weight of that honor and the trust it represented settled over Cordelia like a sacred responsibility. She was wearing the dress of a woman who had died defending this way of life. As the sun crested the canyon walls, the entire tribe gathered in a natural amphitheater formed by towering red rocks. Men, women, and children arranged themselves in concentric circles around a cleared space where Grandfather Ashki waited with several other elders. Their faces were painted with traditional designs that spoke of ancient ceremonies and sacred obligations. Takota stood with the warriors, his expression carefully neutral, but she could read the tension in his shoulders. Whatever was about to happen, he was as uncertain of the outcome as she was. Grandfather Ashki stepped forward, his voice carrying easily across the gathered crowd despite his advanced age. He spoke first in Apache long, formal phrases that had the cadence of ritual recitation. Then he switched to careful English. You come to us as outsiders seeking to become family. This is not thing done lightly. Our ancestors watch. Our children's children will judge our choice this day. His dark eyes fixed on Cordelia with penetrating intensity. Are you prepared to prove your heart belongs to the people? I am, she replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Ashki nodded and gestured toward the eastern canyon wall, where a narrow path wound upward into seemingly impossible heights. You will climb to the sacred cave where our ancestors left their marks in stone. There you will spend 3 days alone, with no food, no water, no comfort. If the spirits accept you, you will receive a vision showing your true name, the name by which you will be known among us forever. If they reject you, he didn't finish, but everyone understood. The desert was unforgiving to those who lacked the knowledge and strength to survive its tests. Bidziel stepped forward, his war paint making his face look like a carved mask. He carried a small leather pouch which he handed to Ashki with obvious reluctance. The young warrior Bidziel offers you this gift, the elder announced, holding up the pouch. Medicine herbs to help you find visions. But beware, the spirits will show you truth, whether you wish to see it or not. Many who seek visions learn things about themselves they cannot bear. Cordelia accepted the pouch with both hands, recognizing the significance of the gesture. Bidzil was giving her the tools she needed despite his own doubts about her worthiness. "Thank you," she said, meeting his suspicious gaze directly. "I will not waste your gift." As she turned toward the treacherous climb that awaited, Dakota caught her eye. He touched his heart once, then pointed toward the sacred cave, a gesture that needed no words. Whether she lived or died, she would carry his love with her into the wilderness. The first step up the narrow path felt like stepping across a threshold into another world entirely. The climb nearly killed her before the trial even began. The path up the canyon wall was little more than handholds carved by centuries of wind and rain, each step a test of will over vertigo. By the time Cordelia reached the sacred cave, her hands were bloodied and her breath came in harsh gasps that echoed off the stone walls. The cave itself was larger than it had appeared from below, a natural cathedral with walls covered in ancient paintings, spirals and animals, human figures, with outstretched arms, symbols that seemed to pulse with meaning just beyond her understanding. This was a holy place, she realized, where countless generations had come seeking guidance from the spirit world. As the sun set on her first day alone, she consumed the vision herbs Bidzil had provided, following Ayana's whispered instructions about preparation and prayer. The bitter taste lingered on her tongue as she settled cross-legged before the painted walls and waited for whatever revelations would come. The first vision arrived with a deep desert night. She saw herself as a child, sitting in her father's church while he preached about savage Indians and the Christian duty to civilize the wilderness. She felt again her growing discomfort with those words, the questions that had led her to seek out Dakota by the river all those years ago. Even then, she had sensed the lies in her father's certainty. The scene shifted and she was 17 again, watching Dakota teach her to track animals by reading signs in the earth. His patience, his gentleness, his deep knowledge of the world around them. How he had made her feel truly seen for the first time in her sheltered life. Then came the painful memory of that final meeting when she had warned him about the planned cavalry attack. She relived his desperate plea for her to come away with him, to join his people and leave the white world behind. She felt again her terror at the thought of such a leap, her inability to imagine life outside everything she had known. "I was a coward," she whispered to the painted spirits. "I chose safety over love, duty over truth." The visions continued through the long night, showing her the years that followed. Her loveless marriage to Jeremiah, a man who saw her as property to be managed rather than a person to be cherished. The slow death of her spirit in a world of social obligations and meaningless conversations. How she had gradually become a stranger to herself. On the second day, as hunger and thirst began to take their toll, the visions grew more intense. She saw Dakota's brother Nate falling to cavalry bullets, children crying over parents who would never return home, families forced from ancestral lands to die on government reservations. She witnessed her own father directing soldiers to Apache campsites, his face hard with righteous certainty. The man who had taught her to read Bible stories about loving thy neighbor was helping to destroy people whose only crime was refusing to surrender their way of life. I carry their blood too, she realized with dawning horror. My silence made me complicit in their suffering. But the spirits were not finished with her yet. The third vision showed her potential futures, returning to white society as a rescued woman, forever marked by her experience but ultimately unchanged. Or staying with the Apache, not as a romantic escape from her troubles, but as someone genuinely committed to their survival and struggles. She saw herself teaching Apache children to read English so they could better negotiate with government officials, learning traditional medicine from the elder women, fighting alongside Dakota to protect their hidden canyon from discovery, growing old as a bridge between two worlds, helping both sides find understanding instead of only hatred. As the third day dawned, Cordelia knew with absolute certainty what her choice would be. The climb down felt like a rebirth. Cordelia moved with new confidence despite her weakened state, as if the spirits themselves guided her feet along the treacherous path. The vision had burned away her last doubts, leaving only crystalline certainty about who she was meant to become. The entire tribe waited in the amphitheater, their faces grave with expectation. 3 days in the desert without food or water claimed many who attempted the trial. The fact that she had survived was itself a promising sign. Grandfather Ashki stepped forward as she reached level ground, his ancient eyes studying her with penetrating intensity. "You have returned from the place of visions. What did the spirits show you, daughter of two worlds?" Cordelia straightened her shoulders, feeling the weight of the sacred buckskin dress and the even greater weight of the choice she was about to make public. "They showed me truth," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. "I saw a frightened girl who chose safety over love, duty over justice. I saw the blood on my people's hands and the silence that made me complicit in their crimes." She paused, meeting Bidziel's hostile gaze directly. "The spirits showed me that I cannot undo the past, but I can choose who I become from this day forward." "And what do you choose?" Ashki asked. "I choose to be Apache," she declared, feeling the words resonate in her bones like sacred truth. "Not to escape my old life, but to build a new one worthy of the love and trust you offer. I choose to help your people survive, to protect your children, to learn your ways not as curiosity but as commitment." Takota stepped forward from the circle of warriors, hope and fear warring in his expression. "And what did the spirits name you, if you speak truly?" Cordelia smiled, remembering the final vision that had come as dawn broke over the sacred cave. "Sitala," she said, using the Apache word perfectly. "Star woman, because like stars I will help guide travelers through the darkness, and my light will shine brightest in the deepest night." A murmur ran through the crowd as the elders exchanged meaningful looks. Star woman was a name of power, suggesting someone who would serve as a beacon for others. Grandfather Ashki raised his weathered hands for silence. "The spirits have spoken through visions, but we must also speak through wisdom." He turned to address the entire tribe. "This woman proved her courage by surviving the trial, but courage alone does not make family. What say you, shall Sitala be welcomed as sister, daughter, wife among the people?" One by one, tribal members stepped forward to speak. Some voiced continued doubts, others offered cautious acceptance. But when Ayana rose to her feet, her voice carried the authority of generations. "I have watched this woman care for our sick, learn our ways, honor our customs," the matriarch declared. "She wears my daughter's dress with respect. She looks at our children with a mother's eyes. She has proven herself in the place of visions. I say she has earned the right to choose her path." Finally, it was Bidziel's turn. The young warrior who had lost so much to white violence studied Cordelia for long moments before speaking. "You saved Apache lives once before," he said grudgingly. "Maybe you will again." "I cannot love white people too much pain. But you—" He paused, struggling with the admission. "You are no longer white. You are Sitala, Star Woman. You are Apache." As the sun reached its zenith, casting short shadows in the canyon, Grandfather Ashki made the final pronouncement. "The people have spoken. You are no longer Cordelia of the white world. You are Sitala, Star Woman, daughter of the Desert Wind Clan, sister to all who shelter in this place." Takota stepped forward then, his eyes shining with tears of joy. "And if you will have me, beloved, you will be my wife according to our customs. Bound not by paper and law, but by love and choice freely given." As the entire tribe erupted in celebration, Cordelia, now truly Sitala, felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She had found her way home at last, not to a place but to a people, not through blood but through commitment. Under the vast desert sky, surrounded by those who had accepted her as family, she kissed the man she had loved across 2 worlds and pledged her life to their shared future. The desert that had nearly killed her had instead given her everything she had ever truly wanted: love, purpose, and a place where her spirit could finally flourish. In the distance, thunder promised rain, and Star Woman smiled at the sound of hope approaching on the wind.